Good morning. I'd like to welcome all of you to this very special forum of the City Club of Cleveland. And a few of you I see there I want to congratulate especially for being here this time of the morning. I'm Dick Pogue. I'm a former president of the City Club, and I'm pinch hitting today for our president, Paul Harris. And it's a great privilege for me to introduce the Honorable John A. Boehner, who since January 4 of 2007 has served as the 21st minority leader in the United States House of Representatives. And in that position, of course, he's the Republican counterpart to Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And without putting any words in John Boehner's mouth, I suspect that he might like to change positions with Nancy on January 4. John Boehner has served as a congressman representing the 8th District of Ohio, which covers the Cincinnati-Dayton area, for 10 terms, beginning back in January of 1991. He's generally regarded as a, quote, hardcore conservative, but the Cleveland Plain Dealer has said that Boehner, and I quote, has perfected the art of disagreeing without being disagreeable. And the Pittsburgh Tribune Review has opined that, and again I quote, on both sides of the aisle, Boehner earns praise for candor and ability to listen. John was born in Cincinnati in November 1949 as one of 12 brothers and sisters, and he's lived in Southwest Ohio for all of his life. He and his wife Debbie have been married 35 years. They have 2 daughters. And going back in his history, after he graduated from Moeller High School in Cincinnati, he enlisted in the Navy, but for medical reasons was honorably discharged after 8 short weeks. And at that point, he entered Xavier University in Cincinnati, where he earned a bachelor's degree in 1977. After he graduated, he joined a small sales business called New Site Sales. It was engaged in packaging and plastics products, and quickly became the president of that firm. And while he was in the private sector working for that firm, he entered the political arena. First, he was a Union Township trustee from 1982 to 84, and then he became a member of the Ohio State Legislature from 1984 to 1990. Then he entered the U.S. House, and it was marked by a very aggressive campaign, which in his own words, he was determined to, quote, clean up Congress and make it more accountable to the American people. And during his freshman year, Boehner and some fellow members of a reform-minded group, which was called the Gang of Seven, took on the House establishment in his freshman year and successfully closed the House bank, uncovered the dine and dash practices at the time in the House restaurant, and he exposed some drug sales and cozy cash for stamp deals at the House Post Office, all in his first year. He also adopted a personal no earmarks policy when he took office in 1991, and that's a no pork policy that he says he has continued to this very day. He was very instrumental in working with Newt Gingrich and others to craft the famous Contract with America, the bold 100-day agenda for the 104th Congress, which helped to catapult the Republicans in 1994 into a majority in Congress for the first time in 40 years. One of the contract's cornerstones, which is called the Congressional Accountability Act, required Congress to live under the same rules and regulations as the rest of the country. And that particular statute bears the personal imprint of his drive at the time to reform the House. In his most recent election to the Congress in 2008, he received almost 69% of the vote in his district. And for relief from all of this Washington activity, he plays a pretty mean game of golf. So with great admiration, it's my honor to present to you one of the undoubted leaders of the political debate in America today, and clearly one of the most powerful members of the Congress, the Ohio's own Minority Leader, John Boehner.
Thank you. Well, Dick, thank you for that generous introduction. And let me say thank you all for being here today. A special thanks to my friend, longtime friend, Pat Sweeney, who I served with in the Ohio legislature back in the 80s. I wasn't there nearly as long as he was. But we have stayed in touch and our paths have crossed many times since. And again, I want to thank the City Club for hosting me today and the invitation, and for all of you that came here this morning to take part in this discussion. I know this is the beginning of another long day for you, trying to make heads or tails, trying to make decisions without knowing what the next week or maybe what the next day will bring. Working at my dad's bar in Cincinnati, I mopped floors, I did dishes, waited tables. I watched him and other folks in our neighborhood agonize over the same kind of decisions. I had to make them myself when I was running a small business in Westchester back before I got involved in the political process. When I travel around our state, I talk to employers who are not only trying to create jobs, but just trying to keep the people they have on the payroll. And the powers that be in Washington don't stop to think of how, for a small business, employees are like members of a family. You watch them start a family. You lend an ear when they're trying to find a house in a good neighborhood with good schools. You run over to the hospital when someone's sick. And these are bonds that can't be measured from spreadsheets coming from this bureaucracy or this bureaucrat. But as intangible as these bonds are, they've been frayed by a struggling economy. Right now, America's employers are afraid to invest in an economy that's stalled by stimulus spending and hamstrung by uncertainty. And the prospect of higher taxes, stricter rules, more regulations has employers sitting on their hands. And after the pummeling they've taken from Washington over the last 18 months, who can blame them? And while visiting our state last week, President Obama attended a political fundraiser in Columbus, and at the same exact moment, just a couple of blocks away, hundreds of Ohioans were waiting in line at a job fair where they would learn once again the companies aren't hiring right now. They're frozen. Or as the organizer of the job fair put it, employers are, and I'm quoting now, scared to death. Yes, that is what's happening in America. Employers are scared to death. And I met with the president last month at the White House. I conveyed my belief, as shared by many economists, that this ongoing uncertainty is hurting small businesses and preventing the creation of private sector jobs. And not long after we spoke, he signed a $26 billion stimulus spending bill that funnels money to states in order to protect government jobs. And even worse, it's funded by a new tax that makes it more expensive to create jobs here in the United States and less expensive to create jobs overseas. Listen, this cannot continue. You know, I've had enough, and I think the American people have had enough of politicians in Washington talking about wanting to create jobs as a ploy to get themselves reelected while doing everything possible to prevent jobs from being created here in our country. Today, I'm going to propose 5 actions that President Obama should take immediately to break this economic uncertainty and help more Americans find an honest day's work. First, the President should announce that he will not carry out his plan to impose job-killing tax hikes on families and small businesses. Unless Congress acts, virtually every American will see their taxes go up on January the 1st. President Obama stated he wants to stop some tax hikes and not others, once again putting government in the position of picking winners and losers and pitting taxpayer against taxpayer. According to an analysis by the nonpartisan Joint Congressional or Joint Tax Committee, that's the official scorekeeper for all tax policy in our country, half of small business income in America, that's half, would face higher taxes under the President's plan.